Hunter, I got to tell you, it was a terrific pleasure for me to see you strike that ball and to play those 9 holes with you the other day at Highlands Golf and Tennis Center. I've seen a lot of players, I've worked with a lot of players, and I will tell you honestly that your swing is as good as anybody I have seen. In other words, you've got the tools and you have the talent to go anywhere you want to go with this game. I really don't see, from our first meeting, I don't see any limitations in your game. However, there are ifs in between. There's a lot of real estate in between that statement and where you want to go. And I'm going to go over them with you right now, or some of them at least. I'm going to go over them with you. The first thing every golf professional or professional golfer has got to have is talent. They have to have the ability to strike the ball the way they want to, and to be able to move it right or left to right. You have that. So you have the fundamentals, the basis of being a great professional golfer. Now let's talk about some of the things that I feel like you may need to look at to develop to take your game to the next level. I think what we discovered right from the beginning is you had made a comment to me about how sometimes your alignment felt funny, or you didn't feel like you were aligned properly. I didn't catch on to it until we were on that par 5 and I put that club down there, but I got a feeling it had happened before on the par 3 when you hit it to the right. So you had made this comment about alignment, and then you had sort of tied that together with sometimes you know, in the feelings when you hit it a little right or a little left, you over-rotate or you have to hold on. I want you to explore that now on your practice, and then when you go out on into your practice rounds. Just take a couple of those cheap plastic rods or clubs or whatever, all right, the alignment rods. When you're on the driving range, just put them down. You're running parallel left to your target line. Now, I know that you know this, but let's just take a quick refresher on alignment. If this is your target right here, this is your target. This is where you have that point between where the ball is and the target way out. This is your target line. Your feet line run parallel to the left. It's like you're standing on a railroad track. Now, I know you know that, but it's just a quick refresher. So your feet, and you had told me that your feet and hips and shoulders are all parallel. In other words, you don't have an open feet line with a closed or square hip line. Everything is in line. But when I put that club down on that par 5, you were aiming at your target line, which means it was, about maybe 15 yards or perhaps even 20 yards to the right. And if I recall back on that par 3, you did hit a ball out there. I didn't even think at the time to think about that you were aiming there, because we were talking about you had the ability to hit it left to right or right to left. So it brought in a whole different dimension of what's the strategy in going into playing shots. That's the thing that I was thinking at the time. I wasn't even thinking about alignment. However, looking back on it, it could be now. And that's why I want you to go out to the range and experiment with this on the range, and then take it out 9 holes or 3 holes or 4 holes or whatever, and use that same thing. Put those rods down on the ground and then hit those shots, driver all the way up to wedges, and hit those shots where you're running parallel left with your feet line, hip line, and shoulder line, parallel left with your target line. So that's the first thing I want you to do, because that might unjar or disassociate yourself with the feeling that you're having to manipulate your hands through the impact position. You may be manipulating your hands because of your alignment. It could be that. So that's the first thing I want you to think about and work on the driving range and on your practice round. The second thing I want you to work on is your wedges. I want you to do a little homework assignment. I had done an interview with Alan Doyle. Now, if you don't know of that name, Alan Doyle, I want you to just do a wiki of him. Alan Doyle, PGA. You're going to go onto his wiki page, and you're going to see a player so accomplished as an amateur, but he didn't ever interview well, and that's his problem. And he had a horrible looking swing, and that's why he didn't get a lot of respect from the media. But Alan was one of the most accomplished amateurs to ever play the game, ever. He beat Tiger Woods, Justin Leonard, Phil Mickelson, David Duval, beat all of them when they were at the top of their amateur game in college. And he was a 40-year-old man working in a carpet factory in LaGrange, Georgia, with two daughters, working full-time as a shift supervisor. Alan Doyle, I was intrigued by this man, and what I found to be, so his philosophy in golf was, it was about course management, how you manage yourself on the course, right? Alan was all about greens and regulation, man. And that's where hopefully this goes into your purpose. What is your purpose? To make birdies. Alan Doyle beat the hell out of Tiger Woods, all of them, in the early 90s and the mid 90s before he turned pro at the Sonihana and all these old golf courses, because he knew where to hit it, and also he hit a lot of greens. Alan went played on the Hogan Tour back in the late 80s, and then for 2 or 3 years, and then went straight into what was called at the time the Senior Tour. And then by the time he was about 55 years old, this was in the 2005 and 2006, he had won back-to-back U.S. Opens, senior U.S. Opens, beating Tom Watson in Kansas City on Tom Watson's home golf course. So how is that possible? Alan Doyle, his outlook on golf, probably on life, was that he just wasn't intimidated by anybody. And that includes Tom Watson, all of them. It did not matter who they were. But Alan hit a lot of greens, and he worked on his short game all the time. And that's my advice to you at this time, is you focus on your purpose, obviously, but to fulfill your purpose is hitting greens. If you had 14 rolls at birdie in every round, how many of those would you think you'd make? I mean, at least 4, maybe even 5, right? And that's where your wedge comes into play, and we'll talk about that in a second. But again, I want you to think about this in your mind, is that it's got nothing to do with the length off the tee. It's got everything to do with hitting the green. So being in a position, fulfilling your purpose out there of making the most birdies, you can do it easier by being in the fairway, but it's not absolutely necessary, of course. However, it's just easier to get on the green from the fairway. More importantly than that is hitting the green. Now, if you got a wedge in your hand, 9-iron, hopefully 8-iron, hopefully you can think about being and tracking the ball onto the pin and being within 10 or 20 feet, even with an 8-iron. With a wedge, hopefully we can shrink that down to a 10 feet circle with your wedge. Now that calls for you to have a complete understanding of your distances. And quite frankly, I think that you could use my help in caddying, and I'm going to commit to do that. I'm going to go over before you play a practice round or in one of your tournaments here. I am going to go and be your caddy for you in a cart. I don't think I'll be able to carry your bag that long, but we're going to at least play some golf where I am just your caddy, so you've got a second voice bouncing and giving you advice. And my thinking is that, I don't know, I just got this funny feeling that if you had somebody to help you with course management, club selection, and putting, the alignment of putting, where the ball is going to break, could be all the difference in the world. We're going to find out though, and because you had made some comments in your notes here that you had been second guessing. PGA pros, they have a player there. Probably they have a whole team of people helping them with course management. You are on your own. That is why what you said here is fine. Second guess, that's okay. You're on your own out there and you're alone. And we're going to find out if that's something that you could use. And if it is, man, that is some awesome news, because I'm going to be the guy that's going to help you make some of these decisions. So those are the two mechanical things I want you to work on. I want you to work on your alignment with your driver and your irons. That's the first thing I want you to want. Parallel left. The second mechanical thing I want you to work on is your feet alignment with your wedge. Now, when we got to that last hole, your feet were aimed left. Your whole body was aimed left. You were thinking that I'm just going to open up to this shot, where the ball went. A couple of balls went straight left. They were not left. They were just straight with your feet line. So when I had you put your left foot up more square to the target line, you hit it and tracked it right at the pin. And you even said that you had increased the grip pressure on your your left hand. You increase the grip pressure on the last three fingers in your left hand. You're able to hang on to the club just a little bit longer, and the ball track right at the hole. So I want you to use that technique as number 2 with your wedges. Just square it up just a little bit more, and so with this alignment, you're going to feel like you're just slightly open. You're just slightly open to the target line with your wedges. But I want you to take that thought when you're working with your alignment into your approaches. And this is the thing that we were discussing, talking about shot flight into the fairway and into the hole. So let's talk about that right now. So there's no adage that anytime you hit a right to left or left to right ball, the ball is always moving towards the target. True and not true, because then when it gets past the target, it's moving away from the target. A straight ball always moving away from the target. I guess so, but then you have to look at the variance in between these two. How much miss are you hitting with the right to left or left to right ball, and how much are you offline on the straight ball? So I think with your game, you said that you were able to move the ball in 5-yard increments from left to right or even right to left. I think that would be the smart strategy for you. And so even if you were, let's say, aimed 5 yards left of your target line or the ultimate target, and you were aimed 5 yards left, or you were able to give yourself a 5-yard cushion right there, even if you hit it straight, right, you're only 5 yards to the left. If you hooked it just a little bit, you're 5 more yards. That's 10 yards off your target line. Now, obviously, 10 yards, 30 feet left of a par 3, not so great, but you would probably still be there unless the pin was way left. So that's something you're going to have to think about. In other words, you may just want to aim it dead on if a pin is tucked way left. But if the pin is way right and you aim just slightly to the left, then you may have enough green to work with if you worst case scenario, right? If that's your worst case scenario is coming over to the left, you're still only going to be 10 yards to the left or 30 feet, and that still is okay. It's okay if it's a long iron. Now, obviously, if it's a short iron, a 30 feet miss with a wedge or 9-iron is something that you're going to have to think. But I don't think, quite frankly, I'm not sure it's possible for you to hit that kind of a shot. You're just too good of a player to not hit that kind of shot. But I'm primarily talking about off the tee here. So let's say you have you're aiming down the middle. That's your target, and then you aim for a 5-yard cut. And let's say you come off it just a little bit, you're only going to be 5 yards, or worst case, 10 yards to the right of your target. So that effectively gives you about 30 yards there to work with on your worst case scenario. Best case scenario is that you have totally eliminated any big sweeping right to lefts or big pushes out if you're aimed properly, just slightly, and I mean just slightly to the left of your target line. The other thing is, I think that by doing that, by experimenting with this alignment thing, it's going to eliminate these feelings that you had to rotate your hands one way or you had to hold on to it in another way. I remember you telling me that when we were on the golf course, is that sometimes you would rotate your hands, other times you would have to hold on to the release a little bit. This way, you can, if you aim just slightly to the left, you can rotate all the way through and not worry, and here's what your notes were, worry about hitting it too far left and too far right, because you and your subconscious mind you're right there. Even if you hit it to the left, you're okay. Even if you hit it to the right, you're okay. But you're in that 10-yard zone right there. Your worst case scenario, you bring it out to 30 yards, you're fine. No fairway in the world is 10 yards wide. Now, it could be 30 yards wide, but in that case, you might even consider hitting the iron shot. Talking primarily here with your driver. With your iron shot, it's going to be a little different, but as far as the tightness is concerned, but my thoughts on those were, what is the longest iron that you're ever going to have into a par 3? More than likely, 5-iron, maybe a 4-iron. So even then, your expectation of being up and around, 2 or 3 feet of the pin, or even 10 feet with a 4-iron, it's going to be problematic. So you want to be within that 10 or 20 feet range. That seems like that would be a logical thing to do, depending on the green. You might want to be below the green 20 feet, uphill putter, something like that. But the main theme on this particular on this particular point is that the alignment, you're not aimed to the right anymore, which could free up your mind, and so that you can release the club freely. There's the key right there. You know that you are aligned right. You are absolutely positive that you are aligned properly, and you can release the club through the impact position without fear of it going way right or left. That's the next thing that I want you to work on the range first, and then on your practice round. Now I'm going over your notes here and everything, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the cognitive aspects of your game. So second guessing, hitting the wrong shot in the hole. I think that, at least I'm hoping that part of this is because you were second guessing your alignment. That's my thinking on that. You were second guessing where the ball was going to go. So my hope is that once you solidify this alignment issue, then you're going to be free to release the club down the line. That's my hope is. But I want you to continue to work on your short game. I want you to spend a little bit more time on your short game, chipping and putting. And we haven't really talked about putting, and we're going to go over that on another session. But I want you to think about that certainly on around the green. And I want you to, if you're not already doing that, I want you to start working on your short game as much as you're working on any part of the game. You had made a comment here that you're not putting in effort, and that's why you're not experiencing your athletic goals. So here's the thing about what you just said. A lot of guys hit the ball just like you. Every guy hits it like you on the PGA Tour, right? So you have to be able to differentiate yourself from those guys, all right? Certainly in your team and in your district and in the athletic or the amateur ranks in this nation. Well, how are you going to get from where you are, about a scratch player or 4 over in a tournament, to +2 or a +4 in tournament? It all begins with your commitment on this game. Now, and I'm not so much talking about hitting a lot of balls. I'm talking about doing the smart things, in which, when you're with me, this is part of doing the smart thing. But how are you practicing? What are you practicing? When are you practicing? The when could be right after a tournament. You see, when you got something fresh on your mind, you may be doing that already. I don't know. The why is always to fulfill your purpose. Your purpose is to make birdies, and that's your only purpose on the golf course. So focus on what I am doing. What are your stats? Are you keeping your stats? Stats, fairways, greens and regulation, up and down, sand saves, so forth. Where are your weaknesses? What is the weakest part of your game? Are you spending more time on that part than the parts that you enjoy doing, like you said, off the tee? Are you banging drivers all the time just because that's what you're good at? Or are you working on the parts of your game that are your weakest because you're already a scratch player? We've got to shave off another 2 strokes. Where are those strokes? Well, they could be in your short game. They could be on you're not hitting it as many greens in regulation. I want you to start keeping your stats on your practice round and on your tournament rounds, and we'll compare and contrast those. In fact, after these tournaments, after your tournament, I want you, if you can, to keep your stats separately on a scorecard. How many greens and how many fairways that you're hitting, how many putts you're making, and then we'll go back over your round, or after the end of your round, you make the notes. Where did you make mistakes today? That's going to segue into the things that I feel like I'd like for you to work on psychologically or cognitively. You had stated several times on your notes here that you have the fear of playing bad and the fear of hitting the wrong shot. So as I explained to you, that can create anxiety. And when you have anxiety, it has an effect physiologically on your game. So my first hope is that the alignment issue is going to take care of some of this anxiety, because maybe you have the fear of hitting the wrong shot because you're not aimed properly. Hopefully that's as simple as that. But we're going to keep this thing very simple here, all right? I don't want to there's no need to get real deep into this, because this is just a very common thing, and quite frankly, I'm hoping it's going to be a very simple thing for you to overcome. I just want you to think when you're approaching the shot of the best strategy for you to make birdie. And that's it. It's just a dryly executed shot here. So in other words, if you're facing a pin that's tucked way to the right and you've got no out on the right, then your shot here is you want to just play it a little bit left. There's no need to try to snake one in there if you only got 5 steps off the right. Just hit it to the left, make your putt at birdie, and then move on. So in other words, there's no need to really get super aggressive, not here, unless you have just a flip wedge into the thing. Because if you got an 8 or a 7 iron into a hole 165 yards and you only got 5 or 7 steps off to the right, hitting it to the right of the pin would be foolish, you see. So you aim it a little bit to the left, you might cut it just a little bit, but you give yourself a little bit of wiggle room there in case you do come off it. Then if you do miss it right, you're still on the green. That's the thing, hitting green, giving yourself an opportunity for birdie. That's really the thing here. Hitting greens in regulation and giving yourself the opportunity for birdie, not taking these wild chances. I'm not sure you're doing that anyway, but I want you to remain focused on your purpose. What is your purpose here is to make birdies. So thinking about hitting the wrong shot here has got nothing to do with your purpose. In fact, it is anti-purpose. So it's about strategy and dryly executing golf shots. That totally eliminates anything like I hope I don't hit the wrong shot here. This is why I want you to take a real good inventory of your distance, every single club. How far are you hitting your clubs? You know it without doubt. If you got to choke down on one, or you need to hit it just you're in between clubs, you need another couple of yards. You have the ability to do that. This is all about course management, getting yourself on the green with an opportunity for birdie. It's better to have a 30-foot putt than to have, you know what I mean, than to be straight over the pin off the green with a wedge in your hand, you see. So even though the ball on the second one may have tracked on the pin, it's no good. Not as good as the one that you may have missed left, because you've got at least a great birdie, you've got a very good birdie opportunity, even if you're 30, 40 feet, as opposed to being in rough that you've got to put a wedge on. So my point to you is that this is all about club selection, distance control, and that's something I want you to be very, very cognitive of. I want you to think about it. How far am I hitting my clubs? And then on the next level, how far am I hitting my clubs in certain circumstance, meaning wet or in the rough, down grain, against the grain, or on cold days, real hot days, and or windy days. These are other, as we move forward down the road, these are things that, we're going to put it pen to paper. How far am I hitting in clubs on windy days, wet days, and so forth, so forth, so on. But for now, I'd like for you to start keeping your stats on what you're doing in practice and in tournaments. Then we're going to go over it and figure out what's the weakest part of your game. And then that's the part I want you to work on the most. And that's going to hopefully take care of you being a scratch player and then a four handicap in a tournament. Maybe that'll eliminate that right there. But this thing about being fear of playing bad and not putting hitting the wrong shot, hopefully that'll be over and it's be replaced with strategic thinking, purposeful, focused thinking. So I mentioned to you when we were on at Highlands, you can replace these thinking as I'm afraid of hitting the wrong shot, and I'm second guessing myself. You can simply replace that kind of thinking in between shots with just idle chatter about where I'm going to eat and so forth and so on. If that doesn't work now, and you catch yourself thinking negatively, you can literally say stop in your mind. Just stop, and many times that'll just shut down any kind of internal dialogue at that time. And then you simply replace it with words that are kind to yourself. Hunter, you have got to be your best friend out there, right? Because you don't have any other friends on the golf course. They all want you to fail. You got to know that. You've got no friends on the golf course. You and your caddy are the only people that want you to succeed on the golf course, other than the people in your family, obviously. Everyone else could care less, or they want you to fail. So if you are your own enemy, then you've got a very powerful enemy. And talking negatively to yourself or harshly to yourself is no good. And if you're doing that, and we really didn't talk about that, but if you are doing that and you're hard on yourself, I want you to stop it right now. So let's say you hit a shot that didn't come off as you planned. You just simply analyze that, figure out why it did that, and then move on. You know, boy, that was interesting, and then move on. In other words, I don't want you to be hard on yourself. Don't ever be critical on yourself, ever. I just want you to analyze the shot just from figure out why you hit that shot. If it didn't go the way you want, why did you hit the shot that way? Figure it out the best you can, and then move on. You don't have to continue to grind on it. And like I think you had said the other day, you may think about a bad shot that happened two holes ago. That's a very common thing. And that's one of the secrets of why PGA Tour players, they don't move up. They're stuck down on that 200 thing. They can't let it go. They simply can't let it go because they're perfectionists, right? They got that perfectionistic mind. Alan Doyle did not have a perfectionistic mind. He just hit balls on the greens in the fairway. Alan told me he didn't have much thought at all in between shots. He just had a real short memory. In other words, that's no golf adage. And that's what I want you to work on, is that I want you to be your best friend out on that golf course. You see, that's part of the difference between a good player and a great player, is that the great player understands that this is a game of misses. And again, I know golf adage, it's the quality of your misses, right, that can separate a good player from a great player. You miss a fairway? Okay, you miss a fairway. All right, well, I figured out why. Maybe I was aiming a little right. I wasn't, I didn't have the right move on the ball. You take a little practice swing to get the feel of what you should have done, and you move on. Subconscious mind records it. Boom, end of story. That's it. Now you say, well, I'm in the left side of the fairway on the right. I should have been, I would have preferred to be on the right because the pin is left. Now I'm on the left side of the fairway. What do I need to do now to fulfill my purpose? Well, now I got to think about maybe aiming at the pin with a little bit of right to left, or just let it go off to the right. Just let it hit it to the little bit to the right of the pin. So I'm going to have to aim myself strictly parallel left instead of a little bit to the, or strictly parallel left, instead of aiming my feet slightly left to play that little cut fade. Now I'm just going to aim it straight and take dead aim, as Harvey Penick would say, and then so you see, that's the dialogue right there. You see, is changing your strategy on the fly. So by the time you get to the ball, then say that dialogue may have lasted, say, 60 seconds or something like that. When you've got 5 minutes before you get up there, what's the other 4 minutes filled with? Just chatter. What am I going to eat? Or say I've got something due in class next. Things like that. You see, things that do not cause you anxiety. Right? In other words, you don't want to be thinking about any kind of music that causes you any kind of emotional outbursts, psychologically anyway. Nothing that's going to get your mind way up here. You see, that's my point. And sometimes a music can do that. Other times, if it's real soothing music, then yes, that would be a good option for you. Thinking about music that keeps you relaxed. I don't want you thinking about music or anything else that races your mind. You see, that's my point here as far as the music is concerned. But the overall theme in this is that whatever you're thinking, that when it's not golf strategy, is neutral. It doesn't increase the anxiety in your mind at all. So that's what you're going to think about. Hopefully, you'll be able to think about those things in between shots when you're not thinking about strategy. You don't have time to be worried, in other words. And then hopefully that'll eliminate that problem right there. And lastly, on your list here, you say you have about a median in forced execution. I got a funny feeling. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I got a feeling that it's because of this alignment thing, and then you felt like you either over-rotate or hold on. This is the force, I think, that you're referring to, that sometimes you have to force a ball in there because you're not 100% sure if it's the right club or not, or you're not 100% sure if it's the right shot. And indeed, in fact, I did a presentation one time on golf, is that a person aims way right and then they hit a snap hook. Well, that's the subconscious mind's way of getting you back to the left. But because you have not played, this person has not played or practiced hitting 40-yard sweeping hooks, then the best the subconscious mind can do is just think about, I got to get back to the left. Because you're thinking in your mind, you just want to hit it down the middle. You think you're aiming down the middle, and yet you're aimed 40 yards to the right. Subconsciously, you know you're not aimed 40 yards to the right. So you got to get back to the left, but because you haven't practiced it and you haven't acknowledged it, I am aiming 40 yards right, I need to hit a 40-yard hook shot. The best you can do, or the best the subconscious mind can do, and again, the subconscious mind is just, all it does is just a task master. It just does what it perceives and is told to do. I need to be in the middle of the fairway. Well, you're aimed 40 yards to the right. Okay, in that case, hit it 40 yards, and the ball goes 80 yards left because you haven't practiced it. This is my hope, is that this thing about being forced execution, you just got a funny feeling that hopefully it's as simple as that. It's got a feeling that is it. Now, one technique I didn't mention, it just entered my mind, is that as far as your alignment is concerned, I want you to monitor how much you're turning your head to the left, because that can be an indicator how much you're aiming to the right. So if you're turning your head a certain amount too far, then and you're looking at your target line and your head is way this way, you know maybe your shoulders are aiming too far to the right. That could be a good indicator for you right there in practice. So you lay the sticks down there and you turn your head just slightly to the left, and you can see your target, as opposed to turning it way left, and now you got a funny feeling. See, boy, I turned my head way left. I must be aimed too far to the right. Now, again, that is on the tee and on your iron shots. With the wedges, it's going to be a little different. And again, I think we discovered that it looked like to me you were aimed way left on your wedges. So you might want to just square that up on your wedges and just track that, at the hole. So that's the difference then between alignment and the mechanics of alignment with driver, irons, and wedges. So just keep that in mind. And again, I'm going to put that on paper for you and send it down to you through your email. So lastly, Hunter, as far as your tournament schedule is concerned, I feel like I can be with you on one day in Foley when you're heading down south to the Nationals. However, I would like to try to get together with you before then for a 9-hole caddy round, and where I will ride in the cart with you and we'll discuss different strategy, how a caddy would simply talk to his player. I'll have to work on that and figure out when I can get over there, and you can tell me when is a good time for me to do that. Mondays are always, good for me because it seems like they're the slowest time for me, and that's why tomorrow, Monday, is going to be a good day for me to sit with you through Skype. So as soon as you read the notes I've sent you now and see this video, then I want you to text me, because I'm going to text you when I put this up online, get these notes up there. You read this and then let me know tomorrow, or tomorrow night actually would be good for me. Anytime after 5 o'clock on Monday evenings is good for me, and that would be good. Hopefully it's good for you as well on Skype. Now again, I'm in Central Time. I'm fairly sure, is Mississippi on Central Time? I'm not 100% sure, but if it isn't, let me know. And then we'll get together on Skype to make sure that you understand the notes that I have sent you and this video, and then we can talk about it at that time. So I just keep this in mind. I believe in my heart that you've got the talent to do this thing. I really believe that. But it doesn't matter what I believe, it's what you believe. And if you think you can do it, then we've got a hell of a great chance to do this, or you have a hell of a good chance to do this. However, not putting in the effort, that's not going to work. So if you're serious about this thing and you're putting all the pieces together, and it appears that you are serious, all the players now seem to be hopefully coming in. You've got a great chemistry, and you trust your instructor. Now you brought me on board. I'm going to tell you something, man. Most collegiate players are not doing that, or if they are, they're not listening. They're not coachable, you see. And so now my hope is that you've taken this step, making the separation, right? This is my hope. You're bringing in people that may know a little bit more about specific areas in golf than you do. And if that's the case, then you're open to learning. But as I stated, you put up these walls around people that want to give you advice on every thing under the sun. You leave it to the people that know what they're talking about. People like Brian, I believe it was his name, over at Greystone, and people like myself. And so you are taking the next step. But this thing about not putting in the effort, I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. But if it means not putting in the practice time, this is something I want you to start thinking about, right? Is if that's what that means, I want you to think about that. Is start increasing your practice time, but increasing it smart. You see, I want you to increase it smart. No need to go out there and just keep banging balls. Work on the things and keep the things that you're great at, which is off the tee. You keep working on those things to keep it sharp. But I want you to think about, if that's again what you're talking about here. Think about working on the things that you're weak at. Keeping your stats will indicate what it is that you're the weakest at. What is your putting percentage? What is your green in regulation? What is your fairways? What is your up and down rate? What is your scramble rate? Things like that. Then we'll take it down even a steep lower down the old rabbit hole. And let's say you're hitting 10 greens per round. Then all of a sudden, by the time we get finished, then you're up to 12 greens per round, but you haven't decreased your scoring average. Well, now it's a matter of hitting it closer to the pin and making more putts. And that's something I want to talk to you about when we get together next, is your putting mentality. So that's going to be the next thing on our list. I'm going to let you know when I can get over to your way. It's not going to be in a tournament, but it's going to be in one of your practice rounds. I'm going to act as your caddy, and then I'll talk to you about that on Monday night, or we can talk about it the following week. But man, it's exciting to be with you, Hunter. You've got the tools. I mean, you got it. You've got the move, in other words. You've got the game. You've got the talent. Now it's time. Let's take it to the next level. So I'll talk to you tomorrow night, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.